you my mother?" The question wasn't spoken, but it broke something open in the dark. One tiny cry on the patio, and suddenly, a life that had been abandoned was reaching for someone to stay. Over the years, we've fed, watered, and provided shelter for a clouder of semi-feral cats in our backyard. They came and went like weather, quiet shadows under the fence, soft paws across the patio, pairs of eyes glowing at dusk and disappearing before dawn. We never tried to make them ours. We only tried to make the world a little less hard for them. Several years ago, one of the mama cats brought a kitten to our patio.
Meow.
It was her first litter, and she wasn't very interested in mothering him.
Meow.
The sun went down, and all the cats wandered away, leaving one little ginger kitten sitting alone, mewling into the dark. I opened the door, and he looked up at me as if to say, "Are you my mother?" I scooped him up and whispered, "Yes, little one, I am now." He was so small that night, it felt impossible that he had been left behind by a world already full of bigger hungers. His fur was the color of warm bread, still fuzzy with baby softness, and his ears looked a little too... When I tucked him into a folded towel inside a shallow box, he stood there swaying, as if he could not decide whether he had been rescued or kidnapped. Then I placed my hand near him, and he climbed against my palm with a sigh so tiny it was almost imagined. The house was too bright for him at first. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed enormous. He startled at the click of a light switch, the settling of wood in the walls, the distant passing of a car outside. But every time he panicked, all I had to do was lower my hand beside him, and he would lean into it like a leaf, drifting towards still water. That first night, he slept curled against my wrist. I barely moved. I remember thinking that trust does not always arrive grandly. Sometimes it is no bigger than the weight of a kitten choosing not to run. By morning, he had made it clear that he was not interested in being put back outside. He drank water with startling seriousness, as if hydration itself were a job he intended to do well. He ate like a creature making up for a great injustice. Then, with the round belly of the newly safe, he marched 3 uncertain steps across the kitchen floor, tripped over his own paws, and stared at me in offended surprise. I laughed, and he answered with his first brave little purr. We named him Sunny, because even in those early days he seemed to carry his own small light. It did not matter that he had arrived at twilight. He felt like morning. His eyes were wide amber lanterns, curious about everything and afraid of almost nothing for very long. He chased the edge of curtains when the wind moved them. He sat in the patch of sunlight by the back door, as if he had been assigned to guard it. He would fall asleep in ridiculous places, inside an empty laundry basket, across a single slipper, with one paw stretched dramatically over nothing at all. The first time a storm rolled in after he came inside, the whole sky seemed to shake him back into his old uncertainty. Thunder moved across the roof, and Sunny disappeared behind a chair, all eyes and whiskers and trembling breath. I sat on the floor and waited. I did not reach for him. I only stayed close enough for him to find me if he wanted to. After a while, he crept forward and placed one paw on my knee, then another, then climbed into my lap as if crossing a bridge he had built himself. We listened to the rain together until the room softened again. Still, there were moments when the old backyard life called to him from the other side of the glass. The other cats would appear at dusk, lean and silent, carrying the smell of cold dirt and leaves. Sunny would sit inside and watch them with a look I could never fully name. It was not exactly longing, not exactly fear, more like recognition. as if some thread in him still remembered the language of wind, the caution of shadows, the unfinished story of where he had come from. And every so often, one cat in particular, his mother, Mara, would pause near the patio steps and glance toward the door before moving on. I used to wonder whether he would choose her if given the chance, whether blood calls in a tone that comfort cannot imitate. But Mara never came close enough to claim him, and Sonny never scratched at the door to follow her. Instead, he followed me, from room to room, day after day, with the solemn devotion of a tiny orange moon orbiting its chosen planet. If I folded laundry, he supervised. If I read a book, he slept on the page. If I cried quietly over things I never said aloud, he climbed into my lap as if grief had a sound only he could. That was the season of my life when the house had become too quiet in ways no one else could see. I had grown used to functioning inside silence, answering emails, washing dishes, going through whole days without once feeling truly accompanied.
Meow.
Sonny changed that without effort. He did not heal everything. Real healing almost never looks like that, but he interrupted the emptiness. He stitched small golden moments into the fabric of ordinary days. The brush of his tail against my ankle, the demanding little chirp at breakfast, the way he waited outside the bathroom door as though separation, even for 2 minutes, was a personal insult. One evening in late autumn, after he was nearly full grown, Mara appeared again. I knew it was her from the way she held herself. Wary, elegant, never asking for more than she expected to be denied. She stood beyond the patio, half hidden by the fading light, and Sonny stood on the inside of the glass. Neither of them moved for a long moment. I watched from the kitchen, hardly breathing. It felt like witnessing a sentence that had begun long ago and somehow never found its ending. Sonny stepped closer to the door. Mara lowered her head. For a second, I thought this might be the hinge of everything, that some ancient pull might wake inside him and send him back into the dark where he had started. But he only touched the glass with his nose. Then he turned, walked over to me and sat down on my foot. Not dramatically, not with any grand declaration, just with the quiet certainty cats have when they decide where they belong. When I looked back, Mara was already gone.